Americans can't beat Kenyans in marathons, the champion said. And then, something nobody expected happened next. Something so dramatic, so shocking, that it would change the entire narrative of professional distance running forever. Stay with me, because what you're about to hear is a story that will test your beliefs about what's possible, about age, about determination, and about the true meaning of victory. Let me take you back. Let me paint you a picture that you can see so clearly, so vividly, that you'll feel like you're standing right there on that starting line, feeling the same anxiety, the same hope, the same desperate desire to witness something extraordinary. This is a story about an American woman who was told she could never be the best. A woman who was told that her body, her genetics, her background as an American simply disqualified her from competing at the highest levels of international marathon racing. This is a story about a moment that changed absolutely everything for an entire sport. But before we get to that incredible moment, I need you to understand the context. I need you to feel the weight of what was at stake. I need you to understand why this story matters so much, not just for running, but for all of us who have ever been told that we're too old, too slow, too average, too American, too something to achieve our dreams. You see, the Boston Marathon is not just any race. It's not just another athletic competition. The Boston Marathon is one of the most prestigious marathons in the entire world. It has been running continuously since 1897. That's over 100 years of history, of incredible athletes, of unforgettable moments. When you run the Boston Marathon, you're not just running a race. You're participating in a legacy. You're becoming part of history. You're joining thousands of other runners who have pushed themselves to their absolute physical and mental limits on those streets. And the competition at the Boston Marathon is fierce. The runners who compete in this race are not your average joggers. They are elite athletes who have trained for years to qualify for this specific race. They are runners from all around the world. They are Kenyans who have trained at high altitude in the mountains of their homeland. They are Ethiopians who have been running since they could walk. They are British runners, Australian runners, runners from every corner of the globe who have dedicated their lives to this sport. But in recent years, there had been a troubling trend. American runners, especially American women, seem to be losing the ability to compete at the highest levels of marathon racing. American men had not won the Boston Marathon in over 30 years. American women had not won in even longer. It seemed like distance running was becoming an African sport, a Kenyan sport, and Americans were simply being left behind. This was the climate, this was the culture, this was the narrative when our story begins. Her name was Sarah Mitchell, and she was 42 years old. Not 32. Not 25. 42. She was a high school history teacher from a small town called Concord, Massachusetts, a town that sits about 20 miles outside of Boston. It's a quaint, historic town full of old buildings and tree-lined streets and the kind of quiet that you find in New England communities that have been around for centuries. Sarah had spent her entire life being average. And I mean that with all the love and respect in the world. She was an average student. She was an average athlete in high school. She had an average life. She got married to a nice man named Robert. They had 2 children together, a daughter named Emily who was 12 and a son named Marcus who was 9. She worked as a teacher. She came home every day and cooked dinner for her family. She went to church on Sundays. She paid her bills on time. She was the definition of ordinary. But at 42 years old, something changed inside of Sarah. Something shifted. Something awakened. She had been watching her children grow up, and she had realized that she wanted them to see something in their mother. She wanted them to see someone who was willing to fight for something difficult. Someone who was willing to push beyond her limits. Someone who was willing to refuse to accept the idea that life was simply something that happened to you, that you were passive in your own existence. She wanted to be an example of courage for her children. Now, Sarah had never been a runner. She had never run a marathon in her life. In fact, She had spent most of her life being somewhat sedentary. She enjoyed walking with her husband on Sunday afternoons, but running was not something she had ever done. But she had always admired runners. She had watched marathons on television, and there was something about the combination of physical endurance, mental toughness, and sheer determination that moved her deeply. One day, about 3.5 years before the Boston Marathon, Sarah was sitting at home during the winter. It was cold and dark outside, as it is in New England during the winter months. She was grading papers for her history class when she saw a documentary about the Boston Marathon. It was a story about an American woman, not unlike herself, who had trained for years and had finally qualified for the race. Something in that documentary spoke to Sarah. Something resonated deep within her. She found herself thinking, why can't I do that? Why can't I train for 3 years and run a marathon? Why can't I push myself to the limit and accomplish something that seems impossible? That night, she made a decision. She decided that she would train for the Boston Marathon. She decided that she would run a marathon for the first time when she was over 40 years old. She decided that she would attempt something that most people would say was crazy, irresponsible, and dangerous. She told her husband about her decision. Robert was supportive but worried. He had never seen his wife run before. He didn't think her knees could handle marathon training. He didn't think her body was built for that kind of punishment. But Sarah was determined, and Robert loved her enough to support her, even if he wasn't entirely convinced it was a good idea. Sarah started training for the marathon. She bought a pair of running shoes. She downloaded a training app on her phone. She started running 3 times a week, slowly building up her distance. The first time she ran, she could barely run a mile without stopping to walk. She was exhausted. Her legs ached. Her lungs were burning. She wondered if she had made a huge mistake. But she kept going. Week after week, month after month, Sarah kept training. She woke up at 5 o'clock in the morning before her family woke up. She put on her running clothes in the dark. She ran through the streets of Concord while her family was sleeping. She ran in the rain. She ran in the snow. She ran on days when she was exhausted from work. She ran on days when she was dealing with family problems. She ran on days when she just wanted to give up and stay in bed. And slowly, gradually, her body adapted. Her legs got stronger. Her lungs got better. Her mind grew tougher. She went from being able to run 1 mile to being able to run 5 miles. Then 10 miles. Then 15 miles. Then 20 miles. She ran half marathons. She ran full marathons as training runs. Her friends and family watched her transformation with a mixture of admiration and concern. Some of her friends thought she was crazy. They said that at her age, she should be focusing on retirement planning and relaxation, not pushing herself to physical extremes. Some of her family members worried that she was damaging her health, that she was being reckless and irresponsible. But Sarah had never felt more alive. She had never felt more purposeful. For the first time in her adult life, she had something to work toward that was entirely her own. Something that had nothing to do with being a wife or a mother or a teacher. Something that was just about her and what she was capable of achieving. 3 years passed. 3 years of dedication. 3 years of sacrifice. 3 years of waking up early. 3 years of pushing through pain. 3 years of believing in something that nobody around her seemed to believe in. 3 years of single-minded determination. And then came the day of qualification. Sarah ran a qualifying marathon, and she beat the time requirements. She had officially qualified for the Boston Marathon. When she crossed that finish line, she fell to her knees and cried. She had actually done it. She had actually achieved this thing that seemed impossible just 3 years before. When she told her family, they were thrilled. Her children were proud of their mother. Her husband was amazed. Her friends were in awe. Sarah was going to run the Boston Marathon. At 42 years old. As an American woman. Against the best runners in the world. But then something happened that took this story to a completely different level. About 2 weeks before the Boston Marathon, Sarah was watching an interview on television. It was an interview with one of the elite Kenyan marathon runners who would be competing in the upcoming race. His name was Samuel Kipchoge, and he was a legend in the running world. He had won 17 major marathons. He had run times that seemed superhuman. He had been featured in documentaries. He had millions of followers on social media. In this interview, the host asked Samuel about the competition. The host said, "Samuel, there are some American runners who have trained very hard for this race. They believe they can compete with the elite Kenyan runners. What do you think about that?" Samuel smiled, and then he said something that would change everything. He said, "Americans can't beat Kenyans in marathons. It's not a matter of will or determination or how hard they train. It's about genetics. It's about the fact that Africans and Kenyans especially are biologically designed for distance running. We have different muscle fiber composition. We have different lung capacity. We train at altitude, which gives us an advantage that cannot be overcome. Americans are built for other sports. Basketball, football, baseball. But marathons? That's African work. That's Kenyan work. No American man or woman has what it takes to beat us at distance running. It's just biology. It's just genetics. It's not something that can be changed with training." Sarah heard these words, and something changed inside of her. She felt her anger rising. She felt her determination intensifying. She had spent 3 years of her life training for this moment. She had sacrificed time with her family. She had pushed her body to the brink of injury. She had endured pain and exhaustion and doubt. And now, this famous Kenyan runner was saying that her efforts were pointless. That she could never beat him because she was American. That her biology disqualified her from success. She looked at her daughter Emily and said, "Well, we'll just have to prove him wrong, won't we?" Emily, who was now 15 years old, hugged her mother and said, "You're going to show him what American women can do, Mom." Sarah cut out the interview and posted it on her social media. She wrote, "I heard you, Samuel. I'm an American woman, and I'm running the Boston Marathon in 2 weeks. Let's see if you're right about your theory." The interview went viral on running forums and social media. Other American runners, especially American women, started sharing Sarah's post. They started expressing their own frustration with Samuel's comments. The running community was divided. Some people agreed with Samuel's assessment about genetics and altitude and African advantages. Other people thought his comments were racist and discriminatory and that they didn't give enough credit to the power of training and determination. But for Sarah, this wasn't about winning an argument on social media. This was personal. This was about proving to herself that she was capable of something extraordinary. This was about showing her children that their mother could overcome obstacles that seemed insurmountable. This was about proving that American women were not inferior to African women. This was about refusing to accept a narrative of limitation. 2 weeks passed, and then it was race day. The morning of the Boston Marathon. Sarah woke up at 4 o'clock in the morning. She couldn't sleep. She was too nervous. Too excited. Too anxious about what was about to happen. She got out of bed carefully so as not to wake her husband. She went downstairs to the kitchen and made herself a small breakfast. Toast with peanut butter. A banana. A glass of water. She needed to have something in her stomach before the race, but not too much, not anything that would make her uncomfortable. She put on her running outfit. She had purchased a special race bib and a special running outfit just for this occasion. She had spent months training in simple clothes, but for the Boston Marathon, she wanted to feel special. She wanted to feel like a champion. She wanted to feel like an athlete. Before she left the house, her family woke up. Robert came downstairs and hugged her. Emily and Marcus came down and gave her good luck hugs and kisses. Robert said, "I'm so proud of you, Sarah. No matter what happens today, I'm proud of you." Sarah drove to Boston with her family. They met up with some friends who were coming to watch her run. They parked the car and walked to the area near the starting line. There were thousands of people already there. Runners from all around the world, warming up, stretching, mentally preparing themselves for the race ahead. The starting area was a sea of humanity. There were runners from Kenya, runners from Ethiopia, runners from Great Britain, runners from Australia, runners from Japan, runners from Mexico, runners from all corners of the globe. They were all here, united by their passion for distance running, unified in their desire to conquer the Boston Marathon. Sarah found herself standing next to another American woman, and they started talking. Her name was Jennifer, and she was a software engineer from California. Jennifer was also running her first Boston Marathon at the age of 40. They talked about their training. They talked about their fears. They talked about what it meant to be American women competing in a sport that had been dominated by African runners for so many years. As they were talking, Sarah heard a commotion near the starting line. She turned and saw Samuel Kipchoge walking through the crowd. He was a tall man, lean and muscular, with a kind of physique that only comes from years of dedicated running. He was surrounded by a group of photographers and journalists. He was being interviewed, being filmed, being celebrated as the favorite to win the race. And then Samuel's eyes found Sarah. He saw her. He recognized her from her social media post. He smiled, but it was not a friendly smile. It was a smile full of confidence and arrogance. It was the smile of someone who already knew that he was going to win. Sarah met his gaze, and she did not look away. She stared right back at him. She did not smile. She did not flinch. She just looked at him with a determination that said, "We'll see about that." Samuel turned away and continued walking through the crowd. But the moment had been made. They had connected. They had acknowledged each other. This was no longer just about Sarah running a marathon. This was now about a direct competition between an American woman and a Kenyan elite runner. The time came for the race to start. All the runners lined up at the starting line. There were thousands of them, but in that moment, Sarah felt like the only person who mattered was her. It was just her and the road ahead and the city of Boston and the dream that she had been chasing for 3 years. She could see her family in the crowd near the starting line. Robert was holding a sign that said, "Go Sarah." Emily was filming on her phone. Marcus was jumping up and down with excitement. And then the announcer said, 5 minutes until the start of the Boston Marathon. Sarah took a deep breath. She closed her eyes. She thought about every early morning run. Every time she had pushed through pain. Every time she had wanted to quit but didn't. Every time she had believed in herself when nobody else seemed to believe in her. 2 minutes. Sarah opened her eyes. She looked down the road ahead of her. The road that would take her through the city of Boston. The road that would challenge her. The road that would test her. The road that might break her or might make her into someone new. 30 seconds. Sarah took another breath. She could feel her heart pounding in her chest. She could feel the adrenaline coursing through her body. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Go! The gun fired, and thousands of runners started moving. The Boston Marathon had begun. Sarah found herself in the flow of the crowd, running with thousands of other people, all with their own dreams and their own stories and their own reasons for being there. The first mile was surreal. Sarah could barely believe that this was actually happening. She was actually running the Boston Marathon. All those early mornings, all that training, all that sacrifice had led to this moment. The crowds were already lining the streets, cheering and shouting encouragement. People held signs. Families stood with their children. The atmosphere was electric. Sarah kept her pace steady. She had trained for this. She knew exactly how fast she needed to run to achieve her goal. She had calculated her mile splits. She had planned out her race strategy. She had visualized this moment 1,000 times in her mind. As she ran through the first few miles, Sarah found herself falling into a rhythm. Her breathing became steady. Her legs found their cadence. Her mind settled into a state of focused awareness. This was the zone that all runners spoke about. This was when running became meditation. When your body took over and your mind could relax into the experience. The first few miles took Sarah through some of the most historic parts of Boston. She ran past buildings that had been standing for hundreds of years. She ran through neighborhoods that had been populated by generations of Bostonians. She ran past landmarks that she had studied in her history classes when she was teaching her students about American history. By mile 5, Sarah was feeling strong. She was right on pace. She had felt no pain. Her legs felt fresh. Her breathing felt controlled. She was starting to believe that maybe, just maybe, she could do this. She could actually run a competitive time in this marathon. But then, at mile 6, something unexpected happened. Sarah saw Samuel Kipchoge running right beside her. She had not seen him during the early miles of the race. He must have been running ahead of her, maintaining a faster pace. But now, for some reason, he had slowed down. He was running at exactly her pace, right next to her, almost like he was stalking her. Samuel looked at Sarah and smiled that same arrogant smile from before. He said, "Hello, American. Welcome to the real world of marathon running." Sarah did not respond. She just kept running, her eyes straight ahead. Samuel continued, "You know, I was thinking about you. I was thinking about your little social media post. I was thinking about you trying to prove me wrong. And I thought to myself, why not make this interesting? Why not run alongside you and show you just how much better African runners are?" Sarah still did not respond. She kept her focus on her breathing and her pace. Samuel said, "You cannot beat me. You will not beat me. Your body is not built for this. Your training is not comparable to mine. I have been running marathons my entire life. You have been training for 3 years. It's not even a fair competition. But don't worry, I will not embarrass you too badly. I will simply run away from you around mile 15, and you will not see me again until the finish line." And then Samuel accelerated. He ran faster, pulling ahead of Sarah, disappearing into the crowd of runners ahead. Sarah felt her heart sink. Samuel was right. She could not compete with someone who had trained their entire life for this. She could not beat someone who had won 17 major marathons. She could not overcome the genetic advantages that Samuel had just described to her. For a moment, Sarah felt despair. For a moment, she wanted to quit. For a moment, she wanted to slow down to a walk, finish the race just to say that she had finished, but accept that she could not actually compete at this level. But then she heard a voice in her head. It was the voice of her daughter Emily. Emily had said, "You're going to show him what American women can do, Mom." And Sarah realized something profound. She realized that she wasn't running this race to beat Samuel Kipchoge. She was running this race to beat herself. She was running this race to prove to herself that she was capable of something difficult. She was running this race to be an example to her children. She did not need to beat Samuel. She only needed to beat Sarah from yesterday. She only needed to be better than she had been before. With that realization, Sarah accelerated. She picked up her pace. She ran faster than she had planned to run, but she felt like her body could handle it. She felt like she had reserves of strength that she had not yet tapped into. She passed Samuel. She ran right by him like he was standing still. Samuel tried to keep up with her, but Sarah had found something inside of her that was stronger than anything he could offer. She had found her purpose. She had found her reason. She had found her power. As Sarah pulled ahead, Samuel tried to match her pace. But within minutes, Samuel was struggling. His breathing became labored. His running became irregular. It was clear that he had underestimated Sarah. It was clear that he had not expected her to be able to run at this speed. Sarah looked back once to see Samuel fading, and then she turned her attention back to the road ahead. She was not running against Samuel anymore. She was running for herself. She was running for her family. She was running for every woman who had been told that she couldn't do something. The next few miles passed in a blur of power and determination. Sarah was running faster than she had ever run before. She was breaking her own records. She was pushing herself to new limits. She was experiencing something transcendent, something almost spiritual. By mile 12, Sarah felt invincible. She felt like she could run forever. She felt like her body had tapped into some ancient source of strength and energy. She felt like she was flying. But then, around mile 13, something changed. The fatigue started to set in. The accumulated miles started to weigh on her body. Her legs started to feel heavy. Her breathing started to become more labored. The wall that all marathoners speak about was starting to appear on the horizon. Sarah knew that she was entering the most dangerous phase of the marathon. She had trained for this. She knew that around mile 13 to mile 15, the mental and physical challenges of the race would intensify. She knew that this was where many runners made mistakes. This was where runners either dug deep and found their strength or gave up and quit. She thought about all the training runs she had done. She thought about all the times she had pushed through this phase of a long run. She thought about her body's capability to adapt and overcome. She reduced her pace slightly, not to rest, but to find a sustainable rhythm that would carry her through to the finish line. She focused on her breathing. She focused on her form. She focused on moving forward one step at a time. The crowds that lined the streets of Boston became her motivation. People were shouting encouragement. People were holding signs with funny jokes and inspiring messages. People were celebrating the runners and cheering them on. Sarah drew energy from these crowds. She drew strength from knowing that people were watching and believing in her. By mile 15, Sarah had settled into a new rhythm. She was no longer running at her peak speed, but she was running steady and strong. Her body had adapted to the distance. Her mind had found a new level of focus and determination. And then Sarah saw the signs for Heartbreak Hill. This was the infamous hill that had broken so many runners over the decades. This was the elevation change that had ended dreams and destroyed hopes. This was the challenge that separated the champions from the rest. Heartbreak Hill appeared in front of Sarah like an obstacle in a video game. It was a steep, unrelenting climb that seemed to go on forever. As Sarah started to climb, her legs felt the burn of the incline. Her lungs had to work harder to breathe. Every step felt more difficult than the last. But Sarah had trained for this moment. She had run this exact hill during her training. She had practiced running up this hill when she was fatigued and tired. She had prepared her body and mind for this challenge. As she climbed, Sarah focused on her form. She leaned forward slightly to assist her body in climbing the hill. She shortened her stride. She increased her arm movement to help drive her body upward. She broke the hill into smaller sections, telling herself that she only had to climb to the next telephone pole, then to the next mailbox, then to the next street sign. And somewhere behind her, Sarah could hear Samuel. He was on the hill, and he was struggling. His breathing was heavy and irregular. He was moving slowly. It was clear that he was suffering. Sarah realized what was happening. She was outrunning one of the world's elite marathon runners. She was pushing past him when he had said that Americans could never beat Kenyans. She was proving him wrong, not through genetics or altitude training or some special advantage, but through years of dedicated training and absolute determination. As Sarah reached the top of Heartbreak Hill, she looked behind her and saw Samuel. He was about 50 meters back, struggling on the hill. He was trying to run, but it was clear that his body was not responding to his commands anymore. He had hit the wall. He had pushed his body to a place where it could no longer perform. Sarah accelerated as she went over the top of the hill. Her legs, which had felt heavy just moments before, suddenly felt light again. She felt a surge of energy and power coursing through her body. As she descended the other side of the hill, Sarah could not help but smile. She could not believe what was happening. She could not believe that she was actually doing this. She was beating Samuel Kipchoge. She was beating one of the world's elite marathon runners. She was proving that American women could compete at the highest levels of international athletics. The next few miles flew by. Sarah was in a state of flow, where her body seemed to move on its own and her mind was at peace. She was running faster than she had ever run before on the back half of a marathon. She was running with power and strength and absolute conviction. By mile 20, Sarah started to think about the finish line. She was only a 5K away. She was only 5 kilometers from achieving her dream. She was only 5 kilometers away from crossing the finish line and proving to herself, to her family, to Samuel, and to the world that an American woman could be a champion marathoner. She thought about her daughter Emily watching her run. She thought about her son Marcus cheering for her. She thought about her husband Robert supporting her through all 3 years of training. She thought about all the people in her town who had doubted her. She thought about everyone who had told her that she was too old, that she was wasting her time, that she should accept her limitations. With about 2 miles to go, Sarah could see the finish line in the distance. It was still far away, but she could see it. She could see that glorious finish line that represented the culmination of 3 years of work. She pushed harder. She ran faster. Her legs pumped. Her arms drove forward. She was pouring everything she had into these final miles. And then, with about a mile to go, Sarah passed a television crew that was covering the race. They recognized her. They knew that she was the American woman who had challenged Samuel Kipchoge. They started filming her. They started shouting encouragement. One of the cameramen yelled, "You're going to make it. The Kenyan runner is far behind. You're going to win." Sarah could not believe what she was hearing. Was it possible? Was it actually possible that she was going to win this race? Was it actually possible that she was going to beat Samuel Kipchoge and run one of the best times ever recorded by an American woman at the Boston Marathon? With about half a mile to go, Sarah could see the finish line clearly now. She could see the banners. She could see the crowds. She could see the medical personnel standing by. She was so close. She was so incredibly close to achieving her dream. She dug deep. She found strength that she didn't know she had. She ran with everything she had left in her body. Her legs were screaming in pain. Her lungs were burning. Her mind was screaming at her to stop, to walk, to take it easy. But she did not stop. She did not walk. She kept running. The finish line was getting closer. 50 meters away. 40 meters. 30 meters. 20 meters. 10 meters. Sarah could see people in the crowd waving at her. She could see the finish line clearly now. She could see the cameras filming her. She could see history being made. And then, with one final effort, with one last burst of speed, Sarah crossed the finish line. She had done it. She had actually done it. She had run the Boston Marathon in a time that placed her in the top 10% of American women who had ever run this race. As soon as she crossed the finish line, Sarah's body gave out. Her legs buckled underneath her. She fell to her knees. She was crying. She was laughing. She was shaking. She was experiencing emotions that were so overwhelming, so intense, that she could barely comprehend them. Medical personnel rushed to her aid and helped her to her feet. They wrapped a blanket around her. They gave her water. They checked her vital signs to make sure she was okay. Sarah was crying and smiling at the same time. She kept saying, "I did it. I actually did it. I ran the Boston Marathon." Someone placed a medal around her neck. The weight of that medal felt like it carried the weight of 3 years of training. It felt like it represented everything she had sacrificed and worked for. As Sarah was being assisted toward the medical area, she looked back down the course. She was looking for Samuel. She wanted to see if he had finished the race. And then, about a quarter mile back from the finish line, Sarah saw Samuel. He was walking. He was not running anymore. He was walking slowly, his body bent over, his face showing signs of absolute exhaustion and pain. Samuel had hit the wall hard. His body had given out on him. Despite all his elite training, despite all his experience, despite all his claims about genetic superiority, Samuel's body had failed him when it mattered most. Sarah watched as Samuel slowly made his way toward the finish line. She could see the pain in his face. She could see the realization dawning on him that he was not going to finish this race as a champion. He was not going to win. He was not going to prove his theories about American runners being inferior. As Samuel struggled toward the finish line, he looked up and saw Sarah. Sarah was standing in the medical area, wrapped in a blanket, wearing her medal, watching him struggle. When Samuel finally reached the finish line, he walked across it slowly and then collapsed to the ground. Medical personnel rushed to help him. They helped him to his feet and guided him toward the medical area. And then something incredible happened. As Samuel was being helped toward the medical area, he walked directly to Sarah. He was limping. He was clearly in pain. His face was covered in sweat. But he walked directly to her. Samuel looked at Sarah with tears in his eyes. He said, "I was wrong. I was completely and utterly wrong. You are not just an American woman who can run a marathon. You are a champion. You are a warrior. You have shown me something today that I had forgotten. You have shown me that the human spirit is more powerful than genetics. That determination is more powerful than any physical advantage. That will is more powerful than anything." Sarah looked at Samuel and said, "Thank you for challenging me. Thank you for pushing me to be better. I didn't run this race to beat you, Samuel. I ran this race to beat myself. I ran this race to prove to my family that I could do something difficult. I ran this race because I believed in myself, even when nobody else believed in me." Samuel nodded. He said, "You have my respect. You have my admiration. I will never again make the mistake of underestimating an American runner, or any runner who is determined to achieve their dreams." The two runners embraced. A Kenyan elite runner and an American woman hugged at the finish line of the Boston Marathon. It was a moment of pure humanity. It was a moment that transcended sports and nationality and age and all the other things that normally divide people. As they embraced, the cameras captured the moment. This moment would go viral on social media. This moment would be watched by millions of people around the world. This moment would change the narrative of professional distance running forever. News outlets started reporting on the race. The headlines read, "American woman, 42, defeats elite Kenyan runner at Boston Marathon." The story went global. Sarah was interviewed by every major news network. Magazines wanted her story. Running publications wanted to feature her. She became a sensation almost overnight. But more importantly, something incredible started to happen. Women all around the world saw Sarah's story and were inspired. Women who thought they were too old started running. Women who thought they were too out of shape started training. Women who thought they had missed their window to do something extraordinary started believing that maybe they hadn't. Running clubs saw an influx of new members, predominantly women over 35. Marathon training programs filled up with women who wanted to be like Sarah. Girls started seeing running as something that they could excel in. The entire landscape of distance running in America started to change. Sarah continued to run marathons after that incredible day in Boston. She ran in races around the world. She won several of them. She set personal records that she had never thought were possible. She became a symbol of what American women could achieve if they believed in themselves and were willing to work hard. And Samuel? Well, Samuel retired from competitive running about a year after the Boston Marathon. He said that he had achieved everything he had set out to achieve, and that Sarah's victory had taught him that there were other ways to measure success besides winning races. Samuel opened a running academy in Kenya, dedicated to training young runners and helping them develop their skills to compete at international levels. But more importantly, Samuel started a scholarship program for young girls in Kenya to receive running training and education. He wanted to make sure that the next generation of African runners, male and female, understood that humility and respect were just as important as talent and training. Samuel also became a mentor to Sarah. He helped her train for future marathons. He gave her advice about running at the elite level. They became friends, united by a shared respect and mutual admiration. Sarah's story spread far beyond the running community. It became a story about the human spirit. It became a story about what is possible when you refuse to accept limitations. It became a story about age and gender and nationality and all the things that people use to define our capabilities. At 45 years old, Sarah ran the New York Marathon and won. At 47 years old, she ran the Chicago Marathon and set a personal record. At 49 years old, she ran the London Marathon and finished in the top 5% of all women in the entire race. She became a motivational speaker, traveling around the country talking to women about pushing past their limits and believing in themselves. Her message was simple but powerful: if you can dream it, you can do it. All you have to do is decide that you are worth the effort. All you have to do is choose to believe in yourself. All you have to do is take that first step. Sarah's children watched their mother's transformation with admiration and pride. Emily grew up and became a running coach herself, working with women over 35 to help them achieve their athletic goals. Marcus became a sports journalist and wrote extensively about his mother's career and the impact she had on women's athletics. But Sarah's story did not end there. Her journey continued to unfold in ways that nobody could have predicted. After her victory at the Boston Marathon, Sarah received invitations to speak at universities, at conferences, at corporate events. She was asked to write a book about her experiences. She was asked to partner with running shoe companies. She was asked to become the face of a fitness movement dedicated to empowering women over 35. Sarah declined most of these offers. She did not want to become famous. She did not want to be a celebrity. She wanted to remain grounded in her community, in her town of Concord, Massachusetts, where she had grown up and where she had developed her deep love of running. Instead, Sarah used her platform to help other women. She started a running club in her hometown specifically for women over 35 who wanted to train for marathons. She called it the Boston Rebels, because she wanted it to represent women who were rebelling against the idea that their age was a limitation. The Boston Rebels started with just 5 women. Word spread. More women joined. Within a year, the group had 50 members. Within 2 years, they had over 200 members. Women were coming from towns all around Massachusetts to join Sarah's running club. And Sarah coached them. She taught them about pacing and training and nutrition and mental toughness. She taught them about how to listen to their bodies and how to push past their mental limits. She taught them that age was not a barrier but merely a number, and that their bodies were capable of far more than they had ever imagined. Many of these women went on to run marathons themselves. Some of them qualified for the Boston Marathon. Some of them completed marathons in cities around the world. They were all united by their connection to Sarah and by their commitment to proving that women over 35 were not washed up or past their prime. They were just getting started. One of the women in Sarah's running club was named Patricia. Patricia was 52 years old and had spent most of her adult life as a stay-at-home mother. She had raised 3 children and had dedicated her life to her family. But after her children grew up and moved out of the house, Patricia found herself with an empty nest and an identity crisis. She didn't know who she was anymore outside of being a mother. When Patricia heard about Sarah's story, something awakened in her. She decided to join the Boston Rebels. She started training under Sarah's guidance. And at 53 years old, Patricia ran her first marathon. When Patricia crossed the finish line of her first marathon, she cried. She cried because she could barely believe what her body had accomplished. She cried because she realized that she was not defined by her age or her past. She cried because she had discovered a new part of herself that she didn't even know existed. Patricia finished that marathon with a time that was respectable for a first-time marathoner. But more importantly, she finished with a new sense of identity and purpose. She finished with the knowledge that she was capable of extraordinary things. She finished with hope for her future. Patricia's story was just one of hundreds. The Boston Rebels produced marathon runners who went on to set age group records. Some of them qualified for the Boston Marathon and ran on the same course where Sarah had defeated Samuel Kipchoge. Some of them went on to compete in ultramarathons, running 50 miles or more in a single event. Meanwhile, Sarah's career as a marathoner continued to flourish. She was invited to run elite marathons around the world. She traveled to Berlin, to London, to Tokyo, to every corner of the globe where marathons were contested at the highest levels. In Berlin, Sarah ran one of the fastest marathon times ever recorded by an American woman. In London, she finished in second place, losing only to a younger Kenyan runner who was competing in her first marathon at the elite level. In Tokyo, Sarah finished on the podium and brought home a medal. But perhaps the most meaningful race of Sarah's career came 5 years after her victory at the Boston Marathon. It was a marathon in Kenya. Sarah had been invited to run in a marathon in Nairobi, Kenya, organized by Samuel Kipchoge and his running academy. When Sarah arrived in Kenya, she was amazed by the running culture. She saw young runners training at altitude in the mountains. She saw the passion and dedication that Kenyans brought to the sport of distance running. She understood why Kenya had produced so many elite marathoners. Samuel met Sarah at the airport and took her to his running academy. He showed her the facilities where he trained young runners. He showed her the scholarship program that he had started for young girls. He introduced her to the next generation of Kenyan runners who were being trained to compete at the international level. One of the girls in the program was named Amara. Amara was 16 years old and was one of the most talented young runners in Kenya. She had been training with Samuel since she was 12 years old. She had dreams of becoming a world-class marathoner. When Amara heard that Sarah Mitchell was coming to Kenya, she was thrilled. She had heard about Sarah's victory over Samuel at the Boston Marathon. She had seen the news coverage. She had read about Sarah's impact on women's athletics in America. For Amara, Sarah Mitchell was a hero. Sarah and Amara spent time together at the running academy. They went on training runs together. They talked about running and dreams and pushing past limitations. Amara asked Sarah about her training methods. Sarah asked Amara about training at altitude. And then Sarah made a decision. She decided to help Amara. She decided to sponsor Amara's education and training. She decided to make sure that this talented young Kenyan girl had the opportunity to achieve her dreams of becoming a world-class marathoner. Samuel was moved by Sarah's generosity. He said, "You are giving back. You are helping the next generation. This is the true spirit of sports. This is what it means to be a champion. Sarah replied, I was helped by so many people. I was supported by my family. I was inspired by the running community. I was challenged by you. Now it's my turn to help someone else. Now it's my turn to give back. When the marathon in Nairobi took place, Sarah ran with all of her heart. She ran through the streets of Nairobi, through the neighborhoods where Samuel had grown up, through the mountains where many of Kenya's greatest runners had trained. She ran in front of thousands of Kenyans who came out to support the race. And Sarah won. She won the marathon in Kenya. She became the first American woman to ever win a marathon in Kenya. The victory was particularly meaningful because it showed that American women could compete not just in America, but anywhere in the world. When Sarah crossed the finish line in Nairobi, the crowd went wild. They cheered for her. They celebrated her. They recognized that she was not just a great runner, but a great person who had used her success to help others. After the race, Sarah gave a speech at the awards ceremony. She talked about how running had changed her life. She talked about how challenging yourself and pushing past your limits could lead to personal transformation. She talked about how American women and African women were not competitors but sisters, united in their passion for running and for achieving their dreams. She said, I came here to Kenya to run a marathon. But I'm leaving as part of a global community of runners. I'm leaving knowing that whether we are American, Kenyan, African, Asian, or from anywhere else in the world, we are all capable of extraordinary things. We just have to believe in ourselves and be willing to work for what we want. The speech was broadcast on television throughout Kenya. It was posted on social media and watched by millions of people around the world. Sarah's message of unity and determination resonated with people from every background and every nation. After the Kenya Marathon, Sarah became an international ambassador for women's athletics. She traveled the world speaking about female empowerment and the power of sports to transform lives. She worked with organizations that were trying to increase opportunities for women runners in developing countries. Back home in Concord, Massachusetts, the Boston Rebels continued to grow. The running club became a model for other towns and cities. Other communities started their own running clubs for women over 35. A network of Boston Rebels clubs emerged across America. Sarah's impact extended far beyond running. Young girls who saw Sarah's story began to believe that they could achieve anything they set their minds to. Girls started playing sports at higher levels. Girls started competing in track and field and cross-country and other athletic pursuits. The number of girls participating in high school athletics increased dramatically in Massachusetts and throughout America. Women over 35 also began to experience a transformation. They started believing that their age was not a barrier but a source of wisdom and experience. They started pursuing athletic goals that they had abandoned in their youth. They started pushing their bodies and their minds to new limits. They started living their lives with more purpose and passion. Universities started creating scholarships for women runners over 35 who wanted to compete in collegiate athletics. Some schools even created an open division in their track programs so that older athletes could compete at the collegiate level. Women who had never had the opportunity to run at a high level in their youth were now getting the chance to do so as adults. Sarah continued to teach high school history, while also maintaining an active running career. She would wake up at 5 in the morning to run before school. She would coach the Boston Rebels in the evenings. She would travel to marathons on weekends. She balanced all of these responsibilities while also being a mother and a wife and a community member. Her husband Robert was her biggest supporter throughout all of this. He drove her to races. He watched the children during her training runs. He celebrated her victories and supported her through the few times that she suffered injuries or setbacks. Robert had become a fixture at marathon start lines and finish lines all around the world. 5 years after her first Boston Marathon victory, Sarah ran the Boston Marathon again. This time, She was 47 years old. This time, she was running as an elite competitor, not as a dream chaser. This time, she was running against runners who had specifically trained to beat her. The race was incredibly competitive. Sarah ran against young Kenyan women. She ran against elite Ethiopian runners. She ran against other American women who had been inspired by her story and had trained to run at an elite level themselves. And Sarah finished in third place. She did not win. But she ran an incredible race. She ran a time that was nearly as fast as her first Boston Marathon victory. She ran with power and grace and determination. When Sarah crossed the finish line, she was not disappointed. She was thrilled. She had proven that she could compete at the highest levels, not just once, but consistently. She had proven that her first victory was not a fluke. She had proven that she was a true champion. As Sarah was receiving her medal for third place, an interesting moment occurred. One of the runners who had beaten Sarah was a young American woman named Jessica. Jessica was 28 years old and had been inspired by Sarah's story to become a serious runner. Jessica had heard about Sarah defeating Samuel Kipchoge at the Boston Marathon. Jessica had read about Sarah's impact on women's athletics. Jessica had decided to dedicate herself to becoming a world-class marathoner. When Jessica crossed the finish line ahead of Sarah, she immediately sought out Sarah and thanked her. Jessica said, "I wanted to beat you because I wanted to honor you. I wanted to show that American women can beat anyone anywhere. And I learned that from watching you." Sarah hugged Jessica and said, "You didn't have to beat me to honor me. But I'm so proud of you. You are the future of American running. You are going to do extraordinary things." Jessica went on to have a remarkable running career. She won marathons in major cities around the world. She set personal records. She eventually qualified for the Olympic trials and competed in the Olympics as a marathoner for the United States. But Jessica never forgot where she came from. She never forgot that it was Sarah's victory over Samuel Kipchoge that had inspired her to pursue running at an elite level. Jessica often spoke about Sarah in interviews. She credited Sarah with showing her that American women could compete at the highest levels of international athletics. The relationship between Sarah and Jessica became a symbol of how women could support each other and lift each other up, even while competing against each other. They were not rivals. They were sisters, united in their passion for running and for empowering women. Back in Concord, Sarah's running club continued to thrive. The Boston Rebels had grown to include over 500 members from all across New England. The group had produced marathoners who had run in every major marathon in the world. The group had produced athletes who had qualified for the Olympic trials. The group had produced a generation of women who believed in themselves and in their capabilities. Sarah wrote a book about her experiences. The book was titled The Marathon of Life: How an American Woman Overcame Limitations and Achieved Greatness. The book became a bestseller, not just among runners, but among people from all walks of life. People who had no interest in running read the book because they saw their own struggles and limitations reflected in Sarah's story. In the book, Sarah wrote about her journey from being an average woman living an average life to becoming a world-class marathoner. She wrote about the obstacles she had faced. She wrote about the doubt and fear and pain that she had experienced. She wrote about the moment when she decided that her life was going to be different, that she was not going to spend the rest of her days wondering what if. She wrote about her children and how they had supported her. She wrote about her husband and his unconditional support. She wrote about the Boston Rebels and the women who had been inspired by her story to pursue their own dreams. She wrote about Samuel Kipchoge and how his challenge had become the catalyst for her greatest achievement. The book included practical advice about training for marathons. It included nutritional information and training schedules. But more importantly, it included Sarah's personal reflections about what it meant to be a champion, about what it took to push past your limits, about what it felt like to achieve something that seemed impossible. Readers from around the world contacted Sarah after reading her book. Women wrote to her and told her about how her story had inspired them to pursue their own athletic goals. They told her about how they had started running after reading about her. They told her about the marathons they had completed. They told her about how Sarah had changed their lives. Men also wrote to her. Men who were inspired by her determination. Men who saw their own wives or daughters in Sarah's story and wanted to support them in pursuing athletic goals. Men who appreciated the message that age and gender and background did not have to define your future. At age 50, Sarah made a decision that shocked many in the running community. She decided to run an ultramarathon. She decided to run a race that was 50 miles long. That was more than twice the distance of a regular marathon. The 50-mile race took place in the mountains of Colorado, in an area called the Rocky Mountain National Park. The race started before dawn and required runners to push their bodies to the absolute limit. The race involved elevation changes that were much more extreme than a regular marathon. The race was considered one of the most challenging ultramarathons in the entire country. Sarah trained for the 50-mile race with the same dedication that she had trained for her first marathon. She ran long distances in the mountains near her home. She did strength training to prepare her legs and core for the punishment of running 50 miles. She worked with a nutritionist to figure out what foods and hydration strategy would work best for such an extreme endurance event. When the day of the 50-mile race arrived, Sarah was ready. She was nervous, but she was ready. She had proven to herself that she could achieve difficult things. She had confidence in her abilities. She believed that she could complete this race. The first half of the 50-mile race went well. Sarah ran with a group of other runners, maintaining a steady pace and conserving her energy. The scenery was beautiful, with mountains towering above her and streams running alongside the trail. Sarah found herself in a state of flow, where running became a meditation and the miles passed almost without her noticing. But around mile 25, the halfway point of the race, Sarah started to struggle. Her legs were tired. The elevation was making it harder for her to breathe. The accumulated miles were starting to weigh on her body. She was experiencing pain in her knees and her ankles. Sarah wanted to quit. She wanted to stop and walk off the trail and wait for a ride back to civilization. She wanted to accept defeat and call this race done. But then she thought about all the things she had overcome to get to this point. She thought about her journey from being an average woman to becoming a marathoner. She thought about all the women who had been inspired by her. She thought about her daughter Emily and her son Marcus. She thought about her husband Robert, who was at a support station ahead, waiting for her to reach him. Sarah decided to continue. She decided to push through the pain. She decided to finish what she had started. The second half of the 50-mile race was incredibly difficult. Sarah was running on pure willpower at this point. Her body was exhausted. Her mind was begging her to stop. But her will to finish was stronger than all of that. She reached support stations where volunteers gave her water and food. She met her husband at one of the stations, and he encouraged her to keep going. He told her that she was strong. He told her that she was capable. He told her that he believed in her. Sarah continued running. Mile 30. Mile 35. Mile 40. The finish line was getting closer, but it still felt impossibly far away. At mile 45, Sarah was barely able to run. She was mostly walking, but she was still moving forward. She had less than 5 miles to go. She was so close. And then, with just 2 miles to go, something incredible happened. A group of runners from the Boston Rebels appeared on the trail. They had driven to Colorado to support Sarah. They had positioned themselves on the trail to run the final 2 miles with her. When Sarah saw them, tears streamed down her face. Emily was there. Her daughter Emily, who was now a running coach herself, was there to run the final miles with her mother. Patricia was there, the 52-year-old woman who had run her first marathon under Sarah's guidance. Jennifer was there, the software engineer from California who had stood next to Sarah at the starting line of her first Boston Marathon. These women formed a circle around Sarah, and together they ran the final 2 miles of the race. They ran through the mountains of Colorado. They ran toward the finish line. They ran as a community, united in their celebration of Sarah's determination and perseverance. When Sarah crossed the finish line of the 50-mile race, she collapsed to her knees. She was exhausted. She was overwhelmed. She was crying and laughing at the same time. She had completed a 50-mile ultramarathon at age 50. The women from the Boston Rebels surrounded Sarah. They hugged her. They celebrated with her. They told her how much she meant to them. They told her how her story had changed their lives. They told her that she was a true champion, not just as an athlete, but as a person. As Sarah was being taken to the medical tent to recover, she looked out at all the women who had come to support her. She looked at her family. She looked at all the women who had been inspired by her journey. And she realized something profound. Her success was not about winning races. Her success was not about setting personal records or running fast times. Her success was about inspiring other people. Her success was about showing other women that they were capable of extraordinary things. Her success was about creating a community of women who believed in themselves and supported each other. In the years that followed, Sarah's impact on women's athletics continued to grow. She became a mentor to countless women. She inspired women to pursue athletic goals that they had abandoned in their youth. She showed women that age was not a barrier but an advantage, because age brought wisdom and perspective and a deep understanding of what truly mattered in life. Sarah eventually retired from competitive running at age 55. Her last race was a marathon in her hometown of Concord, Massachusetts. Thousands of people came out to watch her run this final marathon. The mayor of Concord declared it Sarah Mitchell Marathon Day. Runners from the Boston Rebels lined the entire course, cheering for Sarah and supporting her as she ran her final competitive race. When Sarah crossed the finish line of this final marathon, the entire community of Concord came to celebrate her. They cheered. They cried. They thanked her for inspiring them and for showing them what was possible when you believed in yourself and refused to accept limitations. Sarah finished her final marathon at age 55 with a respectable time. But more importantly, she finished with a sense of fulfillment and peace. She had accomplished everything she had set out to accomplish. She had pushed herself to the absolute limit. She had inspired thousands of people. She had changed the landscape of women's athletics. After retiring from competitive running, Sarah devoted herself to coaching and mentoring. She continued to lead the Boston Rebels. She traveled around the country speaking to women about pushing past their limits. She wrote more books. She started a foundation dedicated to helping women over 35 pursue athletic goals. The Sarah Mitchell Foundation provided grants to women who wanted to train for marathons. It provided scholarships to women who wanted to become running coaches. It provided resources and support to communities that wanted to start their own running clubs. The foundation became a beacon of hope for women who believed that age did not have to define their future. Emily, Sarah's daughter, took over much of the day-to-day operations of the Boston Rebels. She had become an accomplished running coach in her own right. She had worked with hundreds of women to help them achieve their athletic goals. She credited her mother with inspiring her to pursue a career in sports coaching. Marcus, Sarah's son, continued his work as a sports journalist. He wrote extensively about his mother's career and the impact she had on women's athletics. He also wrote about the broader movement of older women pursuing athletic achievement. He documented the stories of women who had been inspired by Sarah to pursue their own dreams. Robert, Sarah's husband, remained by her side throughout her entire journey. He was there at every race. He was there to support her through injuries and setbacks. He was there to celebrate her victories and to comfort her when things didn't go as planned. Robert became a symbol of what it meant to be a true partner, someone who believed in your dreams and supported you unconditionally. The legacy of Sarah Mitchell extended far beyond running. She had shown the world that age was not a barrier to achievement. She had shown that gender was not a limitation. She had shown that your background did not determine your future. She had shown that if you believed in yourself and were willing to work hard, you could achieve extraordinary things. Years later, when Sarah was in her 60s, she received a phone call from Samuel Kipchoge. Samuel was now retired from running, and his academy in Kenya had produced some of the world's best young distance runners. Samuel wanted to invite Sarah to come back to Kenya to celebrate the 10-year anniversary of their encounter at the Boston Marathon. Sarah agreed, and she traveled to Kenya once again. When she arrived at Samuel's running academy, she was amazed at how much it had grown. The facility now trained hundreds of young runners. Many of these runners had gone on to compete at the international level. Some of them had won marathons in major cities around the world. Samuel introduced Sarah to the next generation of Kenyan runners. He told them about how Sarah had defeated him at the Boston Marathon. He told them about how she had inspired him to use his platform to help others. He told them about how Sarah had taught him the most important lesson of his life, that the human spirit is more powerful than genetics, that determination is more powerful than any physical advantage, that will is more powerful than anything. Samuel presented Sarah with an award. It was a plaque that said, "To Sarah Mitchell, who taught us that greatness knows no boundaries, no age, no nationality. You are a true champion and an inspiration to the world." As Sarah held the plaque in her hands, she thought about all the ways her life had changed since that day 10 years ago when she had crossed the finish line of the Boston Marathon. She thought about all the women she had inspired. She thought about all the barriers she had broken. She thought about all the lives she had touched. And she thought about how it had all started with a simple decision. A decision to believe in herself. A decision to refuse to accept limitations. A decision to pursue a dream that seemed impossible. As you watch this video, as you listen to this story, I want you to ask yourself a question. What dream have you been putting off? What goal have you been postponing because you thought you were too old? What obstacle have you been accepting as insurmountable? Because if Sarah Mitchell could train for a marathon at 42 years old and defeat one of the world's elite runners, what can you do? If a high school teacher from a small town in Massachusetts could transform her life completely, what can you do? If a woman who spent most of her life being average could become a champion, what can you become? The answer is simple. You can become whatever you want to become. All you have to do is decide that you are worth the effort. All you have to do is choose to believe in yourself. All you have to do is take that first step. Your age is not a barrier. Your background is not a limitation. Your past does not define your future. The only thing that stands between you and your dreams is the decision to pursue them. If you want to hear more stories like Sarah's, more stories about American athletes who overcame incredible odds, more stories about women who refuse to be limited by age or circumstance, then please subscribe to our channel right now. Click that subscribe button. Turn on notifications. Join our community of women who believe in themselves and support each other in pursuing our dreams. We have so many more stories to share with you. We have stories about women who learned to swim at 40 and went on to become Olympic athletes. We have stories about women who started strength training in their 50s and became fitness champions. We have stories about women who discovered new passions later in life and refused to let age stand in their way. We have stories about women who pushed past fear and doubt and achieved greatness. Each of these stories is a testament to the power of the human spirit. Each of these stories is a reminder that it's never too late to do something extraordinary. Each of these stories is proof that women over 35 are in their prime, not past their prime. We also have exclusive content on our channel. We have interviews with Sarah Mitchell herself, where she talks about her training methods, her nutrition strategies, her mental approach to running. We have workout videos led by Emily Mitchell, Sarah's daughter, that you can use to train for your own athletic goals. We have motivational content designed specifically for women over 35 who want to push themselves to new limits. So please, subscribe to our channel today. Share this video with other women who might need to hear Sarah's story. Share it with friends. Share it with family members. Share it on social media. Help us spread the message that age is not a barrier, that women are capable of extraordinary things, that it's never too late to pursue your dreams. Leave a comment below and tell us about your own dreams. Tell us about your own goals. Tell us about the obstacles you are facing. Tell us about the things you want to achieve. Tell us about why Sarah's story resonated with you. We read every single comment, and we want to hear from you. Your voice matters. Your story matters. Your dreams matter. If you are watching this and you are feeling inspired, if you are feeling like maybe you can pursue your own athletic goals, if you are feeling like maybe it's not too late for you, then that is the feeling you need to hold on to. That feeling of inspiration, that feeling of possibility, that feeling of hope. That is what will carry you forward. That is what will help you achieve your dreams. You are not too old. You are not too slow. You are not too out of shape. You are not too anything. You are exactly where you need to be to start pursuing your dreams right now, in this moment. The journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. Sarah Mitchell took that first step when she was 42 years old. She took that first step and it changed her entire life. It changed the lives of everyone around her. It changed the landscape of women's athletics. Now it's your turn. Now it's your turn to take that first step. Now it's your turn to pursue your dreams. Now it's your turn to do something extraordinary. Thank you for watching. Thank you for taking the time to listen to Sarah's story. Thank you for being part of our community. We look forward to seeing you in our next video, where we will share another inspiring story about an American athlete who refused to accept limitations and achieved greatness. Remember, your age is not a barrier. Your past does not define your future. You are capable of extraordinary things. All you have to do is believe in yourself and take that first step. We'll see you in the next video. Keep pushing. Keep believing. Keep achieving.